My name is Lily, and on a cold night in February of 2024, I experienced something so terrifying, so powerful that I can't deny it. Jesus is real. If you are a parent, or if you have teenagers in your family, please listen to this warning. This isn't just about what happened to me, it's about what's happening to the generation I'm a part of. Before that night, I never believed in any of this, not in Jesus, not in anything like what I'm about to tell you. But after that experience, everything changed. I found this channel because I want to share what happened to me, hoping it might wake others up too. Please leave a comment below, whether you agree, disagree, or think I've lost my mind. But hear me out because this is important. So, let me tell you my story. It was a Friday night, and like any other teenager, I was hanging out with my friends online. We were chatting, sending memes, laughing at TikToks, and talking about everything and nothing all at once. I didn't have a care in the world. I didn't care about religion or spirituality. I wasn't into that stuff. My parents were church people, but I had made it pretty clear I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't believe in God. In fact, I didn't believe in anything I couldn't see, hear, or touch. And I was fine with that. By midnight, most of my friends had logged off, and it was just me scrolling mindlessly through my phone, watching pointless videos. It was one of those nights when you lose track of time. I felt like I'd been staring at my screen for hours, but I didn't care. I was hooked. My parents had gone to bed, and my little brother was asleep in his room. The house was quiet, and all I could hear was the soft hum of my phone. Then something happened. I started feeling dizzy. It wasn't just the usual tiredness I'd get from staying up too late. It felt different. The room around me started to spin. My stomach turned in a way I couldn't explain. I told myself I needed to get up, get some water, maybe even lie down for a bit. But before I could even move, everything went black. When I woke up, I wasn't on my couch anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere dark, and for a split second, I thought I was dreaming. But as I looked around, I realized something wasn't right. I could feel the weight of the air around me, heavy, like I was underwater but without the water. The darkness was suffocating. I tried to call out, but no sound came from my mouth. I reached for my phone, but it was gone. Panic set in. I looked down and saw my body, still lying on the couch, my phone still in my hand. I was dead? Suddenly, a blinding light broke through the darkness. I shielded my eyes, but the light wasn't just bright. It burned with warmth, like it was alive. And then I saw him. I didn't know who he was at first, but the moment he spoke, everything changed. His voice was so calm, so full of power and authority, I couldn't look away. "Come," he said, his voice ringing in the darkness. His hands stretched out toward me. I didn't understand what was happening. I wasn't the kind of person who believed in Jesus or anything like that. But when I looked at him, I knew he was someone important. He was more real than anything I had ever experienced. There was something undeniable about him. I didn't hesitate. I reached out, and the moment I touched his hand, everything around us disappeared. The darkness, the suffocating air, it all faded away. We were standing in what felt like an endless void, but it wasn't empty. It was full of glowing screens, phones, tablets, computers, TVs, even VR headsets, all floating around us in midair. They weren't just devices, they were alive with something dark. I stared at the screens, and that's when I saw it. Faces. Thousands of faces. But their eyes weren't alive. They were blank. Hypnotized. It was like they were trapped, staring at something but unable to move. I felt a chill run down my spine. "These," Jesus said, his voice full of sorrow, "are the tools of the enemy. This is the battlefield." I didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "It's just technology. Just phones and screens." Jesus turned to me, and for the first time I saw a sadness in his eyes that broke my heart. "It started that way," he said. "But what you see as harmless is far from it. The enemy is using these devices to control hearts and minds, to enslave souls. Technology was meant to help, to be a tool, but it has become a trap." I looked closer at the screens and I saw it. Chains. Thin, glowing chains extending from each screen, wrapping around the wrists, the necks, and the hearts of people. Some were bound so tightly they couldn't even move. It was like they were stuck, prisoners to their screens. I could barely breathe. "They don't even know they're chained," I whispered. "That is the enemy's greatest trick," Jesus said. "To enslave them without their knowledge." The screens began to flicker, and then they turned a deep red. I saw something terrifying. A symbol, glowing brightly, appeared on every screen. It wasn't just on the screens, though. The symbol started to appear on the foreheads and hands of the people trapped by the devices. It was like the symbol was being burned into their skin. I froze. "What is that?" I asked, my voice shaking. Jesus' gaze hardened, and his voice turned grave. "It is not yet the mark of the beast," he said, "but it is conditioning them. The enemy is preparing their hearts to worship him instead of me. He is training them to value comfort, validation, and instant gratification above all else. When the time comes, they will accept the mark without hesitation." I couldn't breathe. I thought about my own life. How many times had I stared at my phone and felt worthless because of what I saw online? How many times had I compared myself to others and felt like I wasn't enough? How many arguments had I had with my parents when they told me to put my phone down? I had always thought they were overreacting, but now I wasn't so sure. The scene shifted, and I found myself standing in the middle of a war zone. But this wasn't a battlefield of guns or soldiers. This was a battlefield of division. The older generations were on one side, parents, grandparents, all yelling at the younger generations. "You're addicted to your phones," they shouted. "You don't care about anything. You're selfish." On the other side, the younger generations were shouting back. "You don't understand. You created this mess. We're just trying to survive in the world you gave us." And in the shadows, the enemy stood, laughing. The division was exactly what he wanted. "They were meant to be united," Jesus said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "But the enemy has turned them against each other. The older generations must wake up. They must fight for the younger generations, not against them." I asked, "How? What can they do?" "They must pray," Jesus said. "They must teach my word. They must lead by example. They must put me first, above all distractions." Many of them have been lulled to sleep by the same devices. I saw it then. Older generations, just like the younger ones, were glued to their phones. They were scrolling through social media, checking news, playing games, while their children wandered off into the darkness, lost. The next vision was of a church service. But it wasn't like any church I had ever been to. The sanctuary was full of people, but they weren't listening. Some were on their phones during worship. Others were taking selfies during the sermon. Pastor was preaching, but no one was paying attention. The glow of their screens filled the room, blocking out the presence of God. "This is my house," Jesus said, his voice trembling with both anger and sorrow. "But it has become a marketplace for distractions. My people no longer seek me with their whole hearts. They seek entertainment, validation, and comfort." I wanted to scream. I wanted to wake everyone up, but I couldn't. I turned to Jesus, desperate for answers. "What can I do? I'm just a kid." Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder. "You are more than you think," he said. "You are my messenger. I have chosen you to warn them. Not just your generation, but all generations." "But they won't listen," I said, tears streaming down my face. "They'll think I'm crazy." "They rejected me too," he said softly. "But some will hear. Some will see. Speak boldly. Tell them what you have seen. The time is short." In an instant, everything faded. I was back on my couch, my heart racing. My phone was still in my hand, but it felt different now, cold, heavy, sinister. I threw it across the room and fell to my knees, crying out to God. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I prayed like I had never prayed before. I prayed for my generation, for my friends, for my family, for everyone I loved. I prayed that God would give me the strength to share what I had seen, to speak the truth, no matter how hard it was. If you're reading this, I believe it's because Jesus wants you to hear this warning. This isn't just about phones. It's about all of us. The enemy is using technology to distract, divide, and destroy. He is conditioning our hearts for what's to come. If we don't wake up, it will be too late. Parents, grandparents, friends, please pray for the younger generations. Set an example. Put down your devices and seek God first. And to my generation, don't let the enemy steal your soul through a screen. Seek Jesus. Find your worth in Him, not in likes, comments, or followers. Time is short. The choice is yours.